In the early hours of the morning of Friday the 26th of February 2016, Llantrisant, a small town located on the outskirts of the Welsh capital, was disturbed by a great commotion. Starting at around 2 a.m, residents took to social media to complain about being startled awake by the sound of several military helicopters circling above the town. Some users reported seeing helicopters land on the local common, with others complaining that military presence over Llantrisant lasted for many hours. Other residents, frightened by the unexpected presence of so many military vehicles, phoned the police. In the years since, transcripts of some of the calls made that morning have been released via a Freedom of Information request. "I'm concerned," one caller stated. "There is a helicopter flying very low. It has come around 7 to 8 times. It's not like a police helicopter, it's a big double-engined one." Another distressed resident described the helicopter they saw as a Chinook. They wanted to report that they had seen it fly so low that it had nearly hit their chimney. "The helicopter is causing my house to shake," another caller stated. Someone else reported hearing bangs alongside the loud helicopters and wanted to know if their children and livestock were in danger. The volume and tone of the calls made to the police that morning show that this was not a normal occurrence for Llantrisant. Later that morning, as the sun rose, weary-eyed residents turned to the local news for an explanation. The disturbance was, according to the media outlet Wales Online, a major training drill between the British Army and Royal Air Force. Described as a bi-annual training package known as Exercise Chameleon, the events were said to be an entirely normal military exercise, and as such did not require local people to worry. And so there was a simple explanation, or so it seemed. Like so many others in the area that day, Kaz Clark, a resident of Pentyrch, a village located just 6 miles from Llantrisant, had suffered a sleepless night. When she read the Wales Online article, however, she was wide awake. "I can categorically state that this was no exercise," Clark wrote in a comment she posted on the article on the day of the happening. She continued to explain that she had witnessed absolutely everything, and that the target which the military was chasing was not a Royal Air Force plane or other training exercise vehicle. It was a UFO. Clark's comment, along with all others on the article, appears to have since been deleted and can now only be accessed via screenshots. Her story and what she claims to have seen that night, however, has not disappeared. In the years since the 26th of February 2016, Clark has been vocal about her experience, believing that what she and others witnessed that night in South Wales has implications for all of humanity. I was fortunate to be able to meet with Kaz Clark at the location in Pentyrch where the incident is said to have happened.
We ran to this gate and David ran into the field, and I actually called him back because of all the military activity. I didn't want us to appear hostile.
For Clark, the Pentyrch incident, as the case has subsequently become known, did not begin on Friday the 26th. Rather, it started a few days earlier when she and her neighbour Dave noticed a small grey twin-propeller plane flying low and very slow over their village. It was not unusual to see military aircraft in the area. MOD St Athan, a large Ministry of Defence site, is located less than 15 miles away and is home to several Royal Air Force units. However, when Dave complained that he had been kept awake all night by the planes flying, they knew this was not normal behaviour. Their attention now drawn to the plane's presence, on Wednesday the 24th they noticed a second plane, similar to the first, arrive over Pentyrch and swap places with the other. Between the two planes, the airspace over the village was under constant observation, day and night, and so on the evening of Thursday the 25th, Clark and her neighbour decided to camp outside, close to the fields behind her house, to watch the plane. It was around 2 a.m. on the 26th when she and Dave witnessed the arrival of a different plane. Fast, low, loud, it flew over the fields and began circling the sky. When it banked to the left, the moonlight illuminated a mushroom on its back. It was an E3 Sentry, an airborne early warning and control aircraft with a distinctive rotating radar dome above its fuselage. They watched it circle 7 times. Then something even more unexpected happened. a red light became visible above the tree line at the end of the field.
I was totally in shock and awe of what I was seeing when red light turned into 3, which was a triangle on the oblique angle coming in point first, which turned out to be a full-size pyramid.
This pyramid, Clark claims, was an intelligently controlled craft. Standing at the gate that marked the entrance to the field, she and Dave watched it and witnessed something spectacular.
The leading set of 6 lights on the near side edge were brighter than the rest of the ship, like some kind of steering mechanism for the ship. It came in point first, and when it was fully here, it came down in a pendulum motion and lined up behind those trees there. And when it was in the upright position, it fired this green object out at the top like it had been fired out of a cannon, so fast. It skipped across and in front, or just above, these trees on my left-hand side here, and just rocked backwards and forwards gently. I can't tell you what shape it was because it was too bright, brighter than the moonlight, like a really bright green star, about the size of a small car. The E3 Sentry was flying up by this time and back round and coming back down again. I was standing on the gate, I had my leg actually hooked over the top, and I was staring through the bare trees to get a better look, because this pyramid listed to the right-hand side, still turning very slowly anti-clockwise, started to move backwards away from us. And I said to Dave, it's landing. But in actual fact, the field rises there, because you've been out and seen it, and the land was coming up to meet it. And as it neared the ground, it ejected this hand, I described it like a hand of lightning. But it wasn't thin lightning, like we see here. It was thick, like fire, like fingers. And the whole thing lit up really brightly, so you could see the whole outline of it. And such was the size of it, while I was staring at the bottom, you couldn't see the top. That's how big. Now, whilst I was fixated, and don't ask me why I was fixated on it touching the ground, because I don't know to this day, but David said he saw 15 or 20, he described them as orbs, come out the top of it. And I can stand here and tell you that I saw them, but I genuinely didn't, because I was so fixated on it touching the ground. Anyway, I heard, it went from like tail light red to like bright white orange, and the nearest lights to the ground were the brightest.
At this point, with the pyramid object and green light in front of her, as well as the E3 Sentry still flying overhead, Clark describes the arrival of yet more military aircraft.
Wingtip to wingtip, 2 big American planes with 2 engines, propeller engines, on each wing. And I looked up just to see them go over the top. And when I looked back, I couldn't see the pyramid anymore. But that's not to say it wasn't there, I just couldn't see it. But the green object was still there.
With 3 planes now in the sky, yet more appeared. Clark describes these as 2 C-130s, big Hercules aircraft, which turned and flew in behind the other planes. That placed 2 planes out wide and 2 planes in close.
And this green object shot across really fast in front of the planes. The E3 Sentry is still going up and back round again. Excuse me. And it flashed 3 really bright strobes at the aircraft, and then seemed to get excited somehow, like bobbing and skipping and bobbing and skipping in the westward direction towards Llantrisant, because our planes were following it. I think it was a deliberate decoy to draw the aircraft away from the main ship.
With the green object skipping away into the distance towards the town of Llantrisant, Clark watched the 4 military aircraft follow in pursuit. The events of the night, however, were far from over.
And these 2 red barrel-shaped objects came from my left-hand side. One stopped above the hedge just where I was standing. And I'm still standing on the gate. And I just stared at it for a few seconds because of the shock and because I wanted to know. And I could see all the insides moving, like I described it like white noise on a TV screen, but it was more 3D than that. It was more like it was turning in on itself, not flat, you know. And then I looked to see where the second one was, and that hadn't stopped. And that was right above me, just above this branch here. And the one above me changed colour from tail light red to traffic light green, and I could see even clearer the insides moving. and I felt it scan me. When this one had scanned me above here, the red one that had remained sentry the whole time was still there. The green barrel then moved off to my right-hand side above these rooftops here, and then the red barrel moved off to my left-hand side and down across the field. And I was stood on the gate and I watched it until I couldn't see it anymore.
After the barrel objects disappeared from view, Clark and Dave decided to walk into the field to the second gate. They hoped to be able to see some of the other barrel-like objects, which Dave had observed come from the pyramid craft. As they walked, the E3 sentry plane followed them overhead. It was too dark and slippy to see anything more.
So we'd walked back to this gate and we heard the Apache helicopters coming. We'd gone around the side there just so you could get a better viewpoint through the trees, and there were 3 Apache helicopters, one above 2, going low across the fields, pushing all the trees and hedges flat with the force of their rotor blades. Big red pulsing lights going out in front of them on an interception course with the green object that had gone west before. In my opinion, we were only standing at this gate, including the time that it took us to walk down and back again, for maybe 10 minutes. I got back to my house. I heard an enormous explosion from the direction of Llantrisant. Llantrisant's 5 miles from here, and it was enormous. Kaboom. You know, this is not a little fake incendiary device. This was an explosion.
And certainly, as is evidenced from police transcripts from that morning, Clark was by no means the only person in the area to have heard the explosion. People were shaken awake. Car alarms were set off. Seismological data from the British Geological Survey also confirms that, in the early hours of the morning on Friday the 26th of February 2016, there was a seismological anomaly in South Wales. Despite the closest station to Llantrisant being located some 45 miles away, the event still registered. Described by the British Geological Survey as a small transient signal, it was registered at around 4:20 a.m. Around this time, there were also said to have been reports of an explosion being heard close to the Royal Glamorgan Hospital in Llantrisant, with it being claimed that the blast shook the hospital to the foundations, caused the windows to rattle, and resulted in thick smoke coming inside. The official explanation for the military helicopters witnessed by members of the public over Llantrisant was the training exercise Chameleon. However, when asked via a Freedom of Information request whether or not the reported explosion was related to this exercise, the Ministry of Defence said that it would not be possible for the MOD to retrospectively confirm that the shaking reported in February 2016 was caused by the simulated explosions. The wording of this response leaves a lot to be desired. What makes it particularly interesting, however, is that a response was given, whereas other questions posed via Freedom of Information request related to the Pentyrch incident have been met with blanket Section 26 exemptions, which allow for the withholding of information that might be considered a security risk. Why was this question answered? And more importantly, why did the MOD not simply confirm that the shaking was a result of their simulated explosions? As such, it seems to suggest that the seismological anomaly experienced and recorded in the area may have had a different origin. Kaz Clark is one of many people who believe that they know the true cause of the explosion. Later in the day on the 26th, after reading reports online of helicopters and troops from people in Llantrisant, Clark decided to go to the town to see if she could uncover what had happened to the green object she had witnessed being pursued in that direction by military planes. Her first stop was Llantrisant Common, an extensive piece of open land designated for public use. There were rumours online that troops had performed a metal search there.
And all the metal that had been on the common for years, old bikes, a couple of old fridges, were all neatly stacked up along the roadside. And yellow tape everywhere. They'd cordoned off areas once they'd searched it.
Whilst at the common, Clark claims to have spoken to a couple of dog walkers who clarified to her that there had been 2 explosions earlier that day, one in the air and a second on the ground. They claimed it had come from Llantrisant Forest, a 600-acre woodland on the outskirts of the town known locally as Smilog Woods.
Gone up to Smilog Woods, and because we knew the trajectory of the green object, it wasn't long before we found the debris trail. And there were 60-foot trees. This is Forestry Commission, there are no branches on the lower parts of the trees. snapped mid-trunk, as far as the eye could see. Branches lay left and right of us in a perfectly straight line. And when we got up over the ridge, right in front of us was this group of trees, 6 of them all together, snapped 20 feet in the air, and all these white burn marks on all the surrounding trees, and a really pungent smell. And my hair had turned completely white. Completely white. I mean, I'm a little bit salt and pepper, and I'm getting completely white, but overnight this was quite shocking, to be honest, and that is on the video of the crash site.
As well as debris and peculiar burn marks on the trees, Clark also states that it was snowing at the alleged crash site, but nowhere else. I asked her if it was actual snow or if it might have been debris falling from the sky.
No, it was snow, but it was spongy. You know, like you catch a piece of snow and it'll melt in your hand. Whereas with this, you could squeeze it between your fingers, release your fingers, and see the flattened piece, and then it would dissolve. So it was a bit like marshmallowy, but not quite. You know, it would still dissolve, but
like some chemical reaction.
Yes, absolutely, some kind of microclimate that was occurring there.
A similar anomaly was also observed in the fields behind Clark's house, at the location where the pyramid craft supposedly sent out a hand of lightning as it came close to the ground. Peculiarly, this patch of grazing land seemed to have been affected by the craft, leading to it being referred to as the Bald Patch. As well as Llantrisant and Smailog Woods, Clark also investigated this area after her experience.
We'd gone over to the field where the bald patch is, expecting to see burn marks on the ground, and there was nothing, but everything was dead. Everything was dead. The grass was dead, the bushes were dead, like something had sucked all the life out of them. And it was snowing, just in that one field.
To this day, some 5 years after the incident, the Bald Patch is still visible. Many who have visited it report being negatively affected by the patch. And indeed, there may be an explanation for this. Some 18 months after her experience, Clark got into contact with the Swansea UFO network, and in particular the researcher Gary Jones. After much field research, they were able to prove that there were electromagnetic field anomalies at both the alleged crash site in Smailog Woods and across the fields behind Clark's house, specifically at the Bald Patch. Despite the passage of time, the radiation detected was significant and far in excess of what one might expect. According to Jones, in 2019, 3 years after the incident, the highest readings still showed that 1 hour's exposure in what he describes as hotspot areas, including the Bald Patch, would have been equal to roughly 21 days of normal background radiation. Even the lower readings were equivalent to 2.4 days, which is the same as a chest X-ray. It is difficult to argue a natural cause for these readings. And yet, natural causes for the anomalies witnessed at both Pentyrch and Llantrisant are all official public bodies can give. The trees at Smailog Woods, which showed significant damage, or indeed complete destruction, were hastily cut down and replaced after the incident. When asked why this was the case, Natural Resources Wales, the authority responsible for Smailog Woods, stated that they had to undertake felling of larch that were infected with Phytophthora. This was the reason for their removal and replanting. Phytophthora, also known as larch disease, is a highly destructive, fatal pathogen which, as well as affecting larch, can spread to other tree species. Whilst larch disease is a very serious problem and is known to affect forests across Wales, there is no specific evidence that the trees in question were infected. According to Natural Resources Wales' own guidance, due to the seriousness of the disease, a felling licence is required before trees are removed. There is no evidence that such a licence was granted for the trees in Smailog Woods. Not only that, the procedure is to harvest the trees entirely, so as to ensure the disease does not remain or spread. This is known as a sanitised felling. Once again, there is no evidence that this was the case for the trees in Smailog Woods, with remnants of the old trees still remaining dispersed across the ground to this day. The area was also immediately replanted with new trees. According to the Forestry Commission, residual spores which spread larch disease are likely to remain in the leaf litter and soil for 2 to 4 years after felling, and thus immediate replanting is not advised. Perhaps the best evidence against Natural Resources Wales's claim, however, is this. When I visited the alleged crash site, several broken trees remained, seemingly from the night of the incident. They had not been removed as the procedure surrounding larch disease requires. In fact, they were so untouched that even the peculiar white burn marks described by Clark were still on the surface of some of the trees. Consistent with her reports, one tree looked distended, as though on the edge of explosion, which is thought to have occurred to some of the other trees no longer standing when in the presence of the UFO. And so, why were these trees removed? Throughout, the official explanations for the strangeness of the events of the 26th of February 2016 have either not made sense or are incomplete. In addition to the claim of a military exercise being responsible for the disturbances, an overturned lorry was also said to be the reason why many roads, including major highways in the area, were closed that night. When Gary Jones asked via a Freedom of Information request why this was the case, the South Wales Police brushed him off, stated his requests were vexatious, and that they had been unable to locate any recorded information in relation to any road closures on the dates specified, but that, not having any recorded information, they also somehow knew exactly what information he was requesting, as they also stated the officers involved have since left the organisation. A separate Freedom of Information request sent to the Ministry of Defence in 2019 asked specifically about the pyramid craft and the other objects seen that night. The MOD's response, rather than claiming that they did not know anything about the craft or objects, stated that they hold information related to the request, but due to operational sensitivity are withholding it. They cite Section 26 as a qualified exemption, claiming that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosure. The UK's Ministry of Defence does not deny that they know about the craft seen by Clark and others. They are simply unwilling to disclose the information. It is therefore with substantial evidence that Kaz Clark and the researchers close to the case, including Gary Jones, claim that not only did an alien craft visit Pentyrch that night, but that a violent interaction between it and the military was covered up. The ultimate claim is that an alien craft crashed in Smilog Woods and was subsequently removed by the military. This is a claim which has spanned the days, weeks, months and years after the original incident. Indeed, Kaz Clark asserts that only a few days after the Pentyrch incident, yet more military personnel were seen in the area, this time camping in one of the fields close to where she and her neighbour witnessed the pyramid craft.
Well, shortly after the event, we had some men and women come and camp in the fields here, behind this thicket of trees. So from my house, I couldn't actually see them. And I only knew they were there because my local Pentyrch hub and a couple of dog walkers, people come out here quite regularly, have said they've been given different stories. One, that they were a fracking survey team, which didn't go down very well in the village. And two, that they were Vodafone. Well, this tweaked my curiosity and I wanted to come out and see. And I came out with a friend, with my dog, under the guise of taking my dog for a walk. And there were two soldiers walking towards us wearing full digital camos, carrying real guns. So they said to us that they were doing a military exercise in case we saw anything funny going on down in the fields. They've gone through the gate, disappeared down the road. We've gone down to where the second gate is and turned left into the field where they were camped. And I've always said you can take the man out of the army, but you can't take the army out of the man. Every single tent was in perfect straight line, every string, perfect straight line. And they told me they were Vodafone. So within 10 minutes, I've been given two different stories. They said they were Vodafone doing field tests, but they had one of these large laptops, twice the width of a laptop, in a metal case. And they clearly didn't want me to see what they were doing. They closed this case. We'd walked down further in the field where the pyramid had come in, because it came in across that way, sideways, and then swung down. They were wearing white forensic suits doing a fingertip search of that field. They too had one of those big laptop devices in the field with them. And right at the end of the trail where the disused quarry is, they had another jeep with another one of those those laptop things, with satellite dishes and aerials. And we actually think they were triangulating a satellite into this area to listen, perhaps. Not entirely sure what they were doing.
It seems as though the military had a reason to be interested in Pentyrch and the surrounding area. What this reason was, however, has never been confirmed. Arguably even more interesting than the appearance of the military in the fields behind Clark's house, however, was the arrival of a specific plane at Cardiff International Airport on the day of the incident. Identified by plane spotters and shared on the South Wales Aviation Group website, was Kitty 74, a ZE-700 Royal Air Force plane usually reserved for transporting high-level officials such as the Prime Minister. It was seen landing in Cardiff International Airport at 5:36 p.m, just 13 miles from Llantrisant. It had flown from RAF Northolt, the base which services London and would be the first choice for high-level officials needing to fly from the capital. Intriguingly, the then Prime Minister of the UK, David Cameron, was in the area that day, a mere 8 miles from Llantrisant, after giving a speech at a GE aviation plant. He was, however, already in the area before Kitty 74's arrival, potentially suggesting that someone other than the Prime Minister had flown into the area. Was it mere coincidence that both the Prime Minister and possibly another high-level official were both close to Llantrisant on the very day that it is said that an alien spacecraft was captured? And so the stakes of this case are proposed to be very high indeed, none more so perhaps than for Kaz Clark. It was not for no reason that it took her 18 months before speaking out about what she witnessed that night in 2016. When I spoke with her, she revealed that after sharing her comment on the article on Wales Online, she was intimidated.
Because I didn't speak to anybody for 18 months because the mainstream media leant on me and told me to remain silent after my comments on Wales Online. I had a reporter from Wales Online contact me via my Facebook page and said, will I contact her? And I thought, perhaps she's after the real story, foolishly. And I instantly regretted ringing because this was an interrogation. This wasn't, well, what did you see? And, have I any footage? Who have I spoken to? How exactly did I speak to these people? Was it email, text, phone calls, chat boxes? The questioning went on and it was very specific. And I was told to stay silent, so I did for 18 months.
After she began to speak out, the intimidation got worse.
The military came out here and threatened me. When Swansea first published the story, I had some people contact me via my Facebook page, and I've met a few people like yourselves that have had an interest in the case, so I agreed to meet them. Fortunately not on my own. Where I was threatened with perhaps a fatal car accident, that extended to my family. And that's when I decided that I wouldn't stay silent anymore.
Fear of the consequence of speaking out is understandably a genuine and overwhelming concern for those involved in the case. Whilst Clark is the star witness, she is by no means the only witness of the craft which is said to have visited Pentyrch that night. Clark's neighbour Dave, who was with her at the gate when the pyramid craft appeared, whilst not having spoken publicly about the incident, is known to talk privately about what he experienced. Likewise is a witness who posted a comment on a local website in response to a query about the explosions heard in Llantrisant. Sharing their experience a mere 9 days after the incident, they describe seeing a bright red pulsing light, then another and another, which formed the shape of a triangle coming down from the clouds, much the same as Clark describes. They ended their comment by saying, "Please don't contact me. It was something I would rather forget I've seen. Being military involved, don't want to be in any bother with MOD." As for Clark, she believes the only way forward is to give confidence to other witnesses to speak out. One way that she has done this is by self-funding, taking and passing not 1 but 3 polygraph tests to prove the honesty of her testimony. By increasing her public presence and sharing her story, she hopes that more people will come forward. This is by no means easy for Clark. She states that even to this day, she still suffers post-traumatic stress from what she experienced. Indeed, during our interview, whenever a plane flew overhead, her eyes immediately turned to the sky. After experiencing what she claims to have experienced, how could the world ever look the same again?
When you got scanned,
Yeah.
did you feel scared? Was it a fear of the unknown, or do you feel like, because you think that they were benign, could you get a sense of that?
It felt like, and this is going to sound the most bizarre thing, like somebody had reached in and took the fear away from me. I felt elated, almost light, like I'd been touched by something. But it wasn't scary anymore. In fact, I was the complete opposite to Dave. I was energized almost frantically, to the point where I had to tell someone, anyone that would know what to do with this information, because I didn't know anyone. I wasn't a member of any groups. I had no belief in UFOs. If I did, then perhaps I would have known half a dozen people I could have written to have had here on that night, because it was quite obvious they were watching for something. This was not an exercise. They had enough firepower up there to take over a small country. This was huge. They set an ambush for this thing. They knew it was coming. I believe that we've got a right to know what's going on. I mean, the military are pursuing and shooting these things down. We're not even supposed to know they exist. I mean, what have they done? Because in my opinion, these things were not hostile. But we seem to, yes, we would be naive and foolish to believe all life forms are benign, but we're tarring them all with the same brush, so what does that make us? The people should be told we should have a right to vote on this, and not to have this information exempted from the public view, when they were innocent and we shot them down anyway.
This case is far from closed. There are still several Freedom of Information requests pending, which Clark, Jones and others involved in the case hope will shed more light on the incident and perhaps even provide the disclosure so many desire. Not only that, it is said that strange lights are still spotted in the sky over Pentyrch, and have been since the day of the incident. A hotspot for UFO activity, the military, Clark and others claim, are still interested in the area, with military vehicles and searches still being seen and indeed filmed in the area. What happened that night in Pentyrch? To many, the answer is obvious. Earth was visited by an advanced alien race, and we could do nothing but attack them. Thank you so much for watching, and an extra special thank you to my members who helped to choose this video. If you would like to become a member and vote on upcoming video topics, please visit the links in the description. Thank you again for watching. Until next time.